on here. Welcome everyone to the first 2021 All IT Community Meeting. Tonight's topic is resiliency, which I think we all could use a little bit more of right now. This meeting is a combination of effort from 4 of Indy's top technology communities. Rebecca, talk about yours, please.
Yeah, hey everyone, thanks. I'm here representing Women in High Tech. We're a nonprofit organization that was founded about 22 years ago here in Indiana, and we exist to change the landscape of women represented in STEM to be equally inclusive to all. So I see lots of familiar faces. Our organization is for men and women, so everyone is welcome to come. And so that's my fun job, and my day job is I get to be the Director of Sales and Services at Bell Technologies, which is an IT managed services firm. We serve national clients, but are headquartered here in Indy. So excited to be here with everyone.
Thanks, Rebecca. Mike, why don't you go next?
Hi, I'm Mike Gill. I am the president of the Society for Information Management Indianapolis, also known as CIM Indy. We are the local chapter of a national organization that's focused on connecting senior IT leaders here in Indiana and across the nation. We also focus on community give back through scholarships and volunteer opportunities. If anybody would like to learn more, you can go to simindy.org to check us out, and hopefully we have a few people that join us. Thanks.
Sounds good. Jeff, you're next.
All right, I'm Jeff Tunn. I'm the lead singer and driver of the Winnebago of the Indy CIO Network. We're a 10-year-old organization focused on CIOs and senior IT leaders. Our meetings are typically discussion-based on hot topics of importance to CIOs. Looking forward to this evening and this conversation. Stefanie spoke to our group back in January, and it was fabulous, so this should be a great discussion. By day, I work under the moniker of Tunn Enterprises, doing business under the Amplified brand, doing writing, speaking, coaching, and advisory service, all with the focus of changing the face of IT. Doug?
Thanks, Jeff. And I am Doug Theis. I'm the founder of IT Leaders Indianapolis. We are a 5-year-old bi-monthly peer group to help directors and managers and VPs of IT and CIOs improve their leadership skills. I am also the director of national strategy for a data center and cloud firm called Expedient. Welcome everybody. Again, just a reminder that each attendee will receive a follow-up email after the meeting. We will have links for each of the 4 groups. So if you're interested in pursuing more activity with any of the 4 groups, we'll have links and upcoming events for each of the groups, along with a link to a recording of this meeting. So if you have to exit early, or if you want your friends to see this meeting, you'll have a link here in the next couple of days. You know, a big thanks to Expedient for their support of IT leaders and the broader IT community for the last 5 years. Attendees, please turn your cameras on and please mute your microphone. And if you've got questions for the panel, please type them in the chat for the end of the session. Before we turn the meeting over to our amazing moderator, Stefanie Krievins, I believe Jeff Tunn has an announcement. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, thanks, Doug. So many of you may be aware of a fundraising event that's been going on the last several years in Indianapolis called Indy Tech Gives. It was started by a SaaS company here in town by the name of One Cause. And so I would like to issue a challenge to my peers of the IT leaders, the CIM organization, and Women in High Tech. The Indy CIO Network will challenge you to a fundraiser, a trophy to be won by the organization that raises the most money for Indy Tech Gives. You get to pick your own nonprofit that your fundraising goes to, but it's a little friendly competition. They've raised over $60,000 in the last couple of years for local nonprofits. So I will be sending out information about that after this meeting. But I just want to say Mike Gill is used to getting a smackdown from Jeff Tunn in the Indy CIO Network. So it is on, buddy.
It is on, Jeff. I was just luring you in for the big event. So here we go. I'm glad you're still participating.
There you go. There you go. And Stefanie, I'm going to toss it to you with that.
All right. Well, on that note, let's roll, friends. Friends, we have some amazing rock stars to talk to you about resilience tonight, and I can't wait to turn the mic over to them. So I want to set the stage first about what exactly are we talking about here and introduce myself. So my name is Stefanie Krievins, and I get to fix hot messes and create pro troublemakers. So I'm the president and coach of Stefanie Krievins and Company, because I ran out of creative ideas to name my company. So I'm just going to go with my name. But what that means is you all have heard of VUCA, right? Hot messes are VUCA situations like 2020, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And pro troublemakers are the creative, positive change makers that people actually want to work with in order to solve those hot messes. And so through coaching programs with privately held businesses, I get to serve those people and change teams and lives and companies. And so that's why I'm here talking to you about resilience. This is something I've become deeply passionate about over the past year as I've watched the difference between leaders who have succeeded and flown and taken the challenges and seen them as opportunities to fly with their team versus the leaders who have used the stress as an excuse to hunker down and stare at their belly buttons and get nothing done. What is the difference between those two types of leaders? It's resilience. It's not a soft skill. It's a power skill for leadership in the 21st century. It is the ability to have the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, kind of a mental toughness to spring back into shape, like being elastic and flexible, kind of like Gumby, right? This applies to humans, teams, businesses, your resources, like your budget, like the technology services that you use. It's like the Slinky, right? Remember, I'm a Gen Xer, I cannot help myself, but remember this Slinky, this metal thing that you would flip down the stairs and you can stretch it and you can grow it and it comes back? That's resilience. Our leaders that are crispy, that are fried, that have not taken care of themselves, they became that metal Slinky that, you know, when you wrapped it all around and it wouldn't go back to shape. That's the opposite of resilience. And so how do we stay flexible, nimble, adaptable for the continued uncertainty ahead? We've got another 2 years of this hot mess to figure out. No one knows how to lead out of a pandemic. We're going to figure it out together. Here's what I know about IT teams, because I work with a lot of you. I see my friends on here. Hello, Amber, Darcy, Chris. Couldn't help myself. IT teams have a bad reputation for being difficult to work with because of your rigidity. And what I also know is that IT teams can have the reputation of being the go-to resource for creating just the right solution at just the right time that fuels growth. You've probably seen both this past year, if I had to guess. Raise your hand. Yep, you've seen both. As a change management coach who works with IT teams and business leaders through today's conversation, I hope that you'll come to see the power of flexibility and the ability to power up, not power through, while staying focused. We all hope, all of us panelists hope that you will learn to lead with a new kind of strength and perseverance today. So quick audience engagement question, bring up that chat. I want to hear from folks. Why are you here tonight? One, how did you hear about the event? So which group did you hear it from or person? And two, why are you here? What do you hope to learn? And as you put those in the chat, I encourage everybody to check those out, check out that conversation. And we're going to move into introducing these rock stars that Jeff and Doug have brought into this Winnebago called Zoom tonight, so that you can hear from their leadership examples. And we're not going to do formal bios, but we're going to help you learn more about them and their experiences by looking backward for just a hot second. So many of us have read Jim Collins' Good to Great. He talks about the Stockdale paradox, right? Stockdale was a decorated war veteran when he was shot down and spent 8 years in a POW camp in the late 60s and early 70s. The reason he made it out and other guys didn't is because he found meaning in the tough times. So that's why we need to look back to 2020 for some lessons learned as we learn about our panelists. And after they're done speaking, I'm going to invite them to put their LinkedIn bio for their company or themselves so you can connect with them afterwards. So we're going to start with Tonya. Tonya Wallace is the Director for Agile Delivery at Cox Automotive. Hello, Tonya.
Hey, everyone.
Tonya, you've had a unique career path that has gone from journalism to IT And now you combine that with coaching, leadership development, and Agile at Cox Automotive. What about your career and life experiences prepared you for the multiple disruptions of status quo in 2020?
Can anything prepare us for 2020? Oh my goodness, wow. Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. When I was kind of preparing what I was going to say within this area, I think 4 things to me really came to mind as far as what drives me to be the leader that I am today. Agility, diversity, motherhood, and life coaching. So kicking off with agility, I think agility rules the roost today, right? I started in IT. I started actually as an entrepreneur in IT with a small company in 2002 with a partner. So I brought the marketing and sales arm to the table, and my partner brought in the IT arm. So I had no clue about IT. And guess what? I fell in love with collaboration, requirements, automation, and a continuous feedback loop. Little did I know, my Agile journey actually had started in 2002. Before it formalized, right? Diversity of my experiences, I think, leads to diversity of my thought process. Journalism background taught me simple layman execution of complex subjects. Marketing taught me lead with a why. Technology taught me that impossible dreams are reachable. Anything that we can think about is feasible for us, especially through technology. Motherhood, being a mom. I'm a mom, but not just an ordinary mom. I'm a mom of athletes. I have six athletes. I had 3 Division I football players. I have 1 Division I volleyball prospect that's going to be a senior next year, and 2 more super studs at home. And I think just with the athletic portion, the amount of the top tier of athleticism that they play at, it teaches me and cultivates agility, grit, and resilience just in those forms, right?
Yeah.
That's all the things that we need, not just to survive, but also to thrive in difficult situations. I think the last thing, Stefanie, for me is just being a John Maxwell team member. So I've been a John Maxwell team member for a couple of years now. And I got my DISC facilitation certification and became a life coach. And I think that life coaching has honed in my skills to be able to understand people and personalities better, because I help grow individuals, and each individual that I touch that inspires growth actually helps to optimize the entire team just by changing the dynamic of one. So the success of 2020 for Dealer Track, for my company, stem from living Agile out loud, breaking down the silos, relentless communication, dreaming out loud, daring to discover new approaches, challenging one another, and never taking no as an option.
Fantastic. Thank you. Mike, you've got to follow that, sir.
Yeah, that's I'm most hopeful that Tonya made it all the way through with the kids being as successful as they sound they are. My biggest challenge is the young one still at home, so got a little ways to go, but great job on that. It's inspiring.
It is, yes. So Mike, you're the CIO over at Marian Inc. You're a leader that knows his way around a Linux server still, while also driving tech strategy that creates jobs and presents better business intel. What's your top lesson learned from this past year?
So Stefanie, like I said, I'm CIO at an international manufacturing company. So we have locations across the world, across here in the United States, Singapore, Germany, and China. And we encountered and had to deal with coronavirus very early on in the pandemic. And we saw our plants shut down in China, and then we saw it spread throughout the world. And what I will say that I learned was that the most resilient asset that any company has is their people. And we're manufacturing, and we're only making money and parts when people are in the plant. Until robotics comes along, and that'll be the topic of another forum, I'm sure. But the front office and everything that revolves around it, still was an in-office process, and everybody was in the office. And when we, had to send people home, and the front office and some of the ancillary workers being sent home, I'll tell you, I was very skeptical. I was like, most people are not going to be doing work when they go home. And the challenge that everybody had, I still remember having to try to teach my kids, their school packets. I came home from elementary school while still trying to be on a call, trying to get all your deliverables done. It was, the days just kind of blurred because sometimes you were up at night because you had to get caught up on things. And I was already skeptical about people working from home in normal times. And then on top of that, during pandemic times, I just thought that there was going to be a big impact to the business. And what I learned is that, if you arm people with the right tools, you treat them with respect, and you're open with them, and you treat them as your equals. You gotta say, hey, listen, we're in this together. This is what's going on. This is what we still need to try to accomplish. And you work with them. People will really surprise you. They won't just meet your expectations. They'll beat your expectations.
Yes.
And so that I'll say is, to me, that I learned that, people can do great things if you really empower them to. The other part of just being at home in the last year that I really kind of retouched on was just looking at the silver linings on everything. And I know that coronavirus was a tough thing on everybody, but I look back at it and I say that I will never have a chance to be with my kids, waking up every day for as many days continuous, probably for the rest of my life, and just seeing them come home on the bus. And, I think that before coronavirus, I think a lot of people would talk about just kind of keeping that work-life balance, and how do you do that? And I think that in a way, the coronavirus thing and everybody working from home, what you really learn is the most important parts of your life, just because you have to be around them. And just spending time in the morning with my kids, having lunch every day with my wife, it just kind of recenters you. And so I think that everybody should reflect on the last year, and there was a lot of tough times, but also look at maybe how did the last year, just having to be closer with the people around you, how did that recenter you and just kind of change your outlook on things. So
yeah. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, good stuff. Angel, you're next. You are the Senior Director for Professional Services at Genesys. You wear two hats. You're a champion for Agile and a champion for diversity. As a leader, what opportunities did you see for how to navigate these two worlds while also advancing critical technology and being a voice for people of color and other diverse perspectives at Genesys?
Thank you. That's a meaty question. Well, hi all. Good evening.
And we're new friends. This is how I roll, Angel.
You hit me. We just met, and you hit me with the hard, but that's okay. I do wear two hats, and it's funny because it was January, and I was having a conversation with our Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. And he was talking about some of the tactics that he was going to try in terms of getting some resistors on board. And just by him saying that was an aha moment for me. That's when the light bulb went off. And I'm a models person. Like, my background way back in the day, I was a business analyst. So I'm all about a 4 or 5 step model. And I threw up a PowerPoint slide for us to talk through at our next session about, well, here's what I do. Here's the change management process that I follow. And then I was researching to find out what his, processes were and what DE&I stood for, not just at Genesys, but in general out in the community. And there's a DE&I model. So I grabbed it, threw it on the slide, and I literally kind of just took a step back. it overlapped completely,
Yes,
right?
it
So
does.
all the work that I was doing with Agile and change management, I realized that at the end of the day, all we're doing is mindset. We're just setting people's minds. We're just resetting their minds.
Yes.
We're reshifting. We're changing their perspective. I see a bunch of heads nodding, right?
Mhm.
This is all good old fashioned change management 101, organizational change management, culture creation.
Yes.
And when we had that, laugh to each other and said, okay, all right, we're aligned. We know what we're doing now. Then I say, this is fun. How cool is it that we get to come together and create the culture for an organization and shift the culture for an organization using models we already know, right? So then it shifted to, okay, well, how do we leverage ADKAR and the head, hearts, and hands model, right? And all about that mindset talk, right? And then I got excited because then I'm thinking, okay, this is all about team support. Whether you're talking about moving the bottom line, whether you're talking about trying to increase your numbers in terms of females or visible minorities on your teams, we're all trying to do that in order to increase productivity, improve efficiency, and unlock innovation. It's exactly the same. And then lastly, the last point is around education and training, right? Huge. That's almost, it feels like some days like that's 80% of my job is just going around and doing PowerPoint slides and training workshops to explain to people, how we're going to lay out our diversity model in a particular department. And then the other half, the other 85% of my day is, okay, let me show you how from a strategic perspective, we're rolling out Agile and how we're training teams and doing product owner boot camps and setting up Scrum Master guilds. Again, different words, but it's all the same work, all going down to how do we help our companies, especially our tech companies, move the needle with the people that they have, which is their biggest asset. So let's shift our focus to our people. And I'll end with this, which is my favorite tagline. How do I create processes and systems so you can get out of the way and let the people do what it is that you've hired them to do? Mm-hmm. How do we remove barriers and impediments for people to show up authentically as their best selves every day and work together and have fun doing it?
Yes. Thank you, Angel. Jay, you're up next. We got Jay Stanley, Vice President of IT at Heartland Food Products Group. You were blessed, lucky enough to join Heartland weeks before the world shut down. What opportunities did you see and create that your colleagues couldn't or didn't want to see because you were the new kid on the block?
Well, thanks, Steph, and welcome. Hello, Indy. I'm glad everybody's here. It was a unique experience. I walked in and a few weeks later, all of a sudden the world starts shutting down and I'm still learning a new company. Sometimes I have a really good group of people that work for me or work with me. And so sometimes you walk into a situation, you're like, do I need to overhaul what's going on or does it need tweaks? And in our situation, I really think it needed tweaks. So I sat down with the owner of our company and I'm like, so what are our top priorities? And he just kind of looked at me. It's like, last year we lost tens of millions of dollars because we couldn't get product out the door. And then I went and I looked at the project portfolio and I'm like, so we're not really focused on projects that actually enable us to get product out the door. And so it's a shift, it's like, okay, we're looking at the wrong things potentially. And then the second thing that I really noticed was what we were viewing from an IT perspective, we were viewing projects as IT projects, which means that we get all the IT pieces done, but the business hasn't really, it really hasn't been taken to the business. So the organizational change management side, which you know very well. And so one of the first projects that I ended up working on it was kind of an IT project. We had all the IT work done. It was an inventory project, and how do we actually change the inventory model so we keep enough product in stock so that, you know, we can deliver to our customers. And what's funny is that project ended up being key for us because we went into the pandemic, and then we are a food products company, and we know what happened with grocery last year. And so our sales were up probably 20%, and we were already having trouble the year before. But the nice thing was that at the end of the year, the president looks at me and he says, you know, we had a completely different conversation at the end of this year. It was all around, instead of how do we service our customers, it was how do we win first quarter? Because from an inventory perspective, we were where we needed to be. So, you know, sometimes it's not overhauling, sometimes it's tweaks, and sometimes it's getting people to just look at it from a little different perspective. Is it an IT project? Is it a business project? We've been talking about this for 20 years, you know, and it actually, I appreciate what Angel was saying and others, you know, sometimes it's just taking the tools you already have and helping people learn how to leverage it in a new age. And it made a huge difference last year.
Fantastic example. Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
Elliott, you're up, my man. So Elliott
Okay.
is the Chief Information Officer for the city of Indianapolis. You've held many C-suite roles for the city, operations, finance, and now in IT. From your perspective, what could you do differently than anyone else that would have been in your shoes because you know the business of local government better than anybody else?
First, good afternoon, or I guess good evening. Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I was kind of similar to Jay in that while I'd been in this organization, I was named interim CIO about 6 weeks before everything kind of came crashing down. And so I was still getting my bearings in this new role. My predecessor had left to become the controller, and we had a whole new shift in our leadership team. And I remember getting called into the mayor's office or the conference room, and every leader in the entire city county sitting around the big conference room up on 25. And everybody turns and says, Elliott, what do we do? Because someone astutely finally realized we're shutting down IPS tomorrow. We're closing city, county. The local government is we don't know what to do, right? How do we make this world that has been so paper-based, so people-focused, so antiquated work in this new world? IT, what do we do? And it was just so wonderful to be in that space, to be able to take everything I'd learned from having started as a consultant within this organization, working with central services, controller, purchasing, legal. I knew how the core services worked. I became a CFO of this organization, so I knew our budget front to back and built our chargeback model. And then I had actually just gone through a year of writing an RFP and selecting Bell Technologies to be my new managed service provider. So we had a brand new service provider that we had just stood up. And so, which was awesome, great to have a local company, but I was thinking, I don't have a COO. I just implemented this new team. I have a brand new, ticketing and management system. I just got in this job. How are we going to make this work? So I, went back downstairs to the team and said, all right, guys, we've got our work cut out for us, but to everybody upstairs on 25, the roadmap is set, as Jay said. We had the tools in place. You guys just didn't know how to use them or needed to use them because we all had been so presence-based in local government locations. And so we started through the process of thinking, chunking it out and going through the process that I told everybody we need to do. What do we need to do today? What do we need to do tomorrow? Let's set up the communication channels with all of the various agencies, because it's not about delivering technology services. It's about making sure that we can deliver services to 800,000 constituents in the county, right? We are hyper local, and where Mike had agencies and locations across the globe, I knew my focus was just here. And once COVID had touched our county and touched our state, our world was always going to change. And yet at the same time, we were the ones giving information out to so many of you too, and kind of driving what things would look like without having our own plan. So in that moment, everything kind of shifted and allowed us to step up and drive transformation, drive to new services, drive to those transformative efforts that our local government agencies had wanted to do for years, but never had the opportunity, right? We saw our jail go from having 2,000 folks in jail to down to 1,200 because we started to transform the way we did things, because we realized there were different ways for us to go about citations and bring people indoors or bring them into facilities. And so the transformation was happening there. We saw, okay, let's start thinking about how we could do online marriage licensing. And all of these things were tools, or were services that could utilize the tools we had. We just were finally freed. And so we sent out our teams, our consultants, like when I've been in the past, and said, go talk to your agencies, think about the capabilities that they perform on a day-to-day, and how will they need to pivot? What is most critical? What must be done tomorrow? What can be, sloughed off? And we were able to go through and create that matrix with the other agencies, figure out what needed to continue to move forward. And then once we luckily got that CARES Act money, we're able to then start to move forward on even taking those things that hadn't been completed, hadn't been modernized, and fund those things appropriately in order to continue to deliver service to the rest of the county and to all the citizens here. So it was quite a year, couple of elections, and got it all done. But I know we're all now thinking about what do we do after a year of transformation and change, where we had to go to the mat and figure out what we're all made of and make it through the other side.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Elliott. All right, my friends, these are our panelists. These are our rock stars with us tonight to share their expertise. We're going to get into the heart of the conversation. As we do that, I want to invite each of you on this, each of our participants. One, put in your LinkedIn profile if you want to connect with other people. Two, answer this question for me. What rule, what sacred cow was broken last year that became beneficial for your company or your team or you personally? What was that thing that happened in your company you thought, oh, that will never change, that then the rule got broke and it was an amazing thing? So let's dig into the first topic, my friends. The global pandemic is the polite conversation to talk about 2020. That's why we're going to talk about diversity first. All right, we got to talk about the impacts and the re-emergence, the re-rising of the conversations that had around social justice and diversity and people of color and Black Lives Matter. Those are very real. They have very real impacts for our lives now. Including right now, as we know, some news might be breaking that we hope you'll stay with us through. But this is where we're going to start. And here's my premise. Diversity is needed for strength. Strength is needed for resilience. They must go together like peanut butter and jelly. 2020 brought us disruption and the opportunity to practice resilience in multiple ways. The impacts of the public health crisis are obvious, and we want to use today's conversation as a way to keep re-raising the voices and needs of those that add rich, beautiful diversity to our workplaces in many, many ways, especially for those who are people of color and those who have identities at multiple intersections, women of color, and those with LGBTQ+ identities. The economic data is clear. The research comes in and it shows us those companies with more diverse management teams have 19% higher revenues due to innovation. Research confirms that companies with more women in the C-suite are more profitable. Yet, what do our boardrooms look like? They look very similar than they did 15 years ago. Like my friends Jeff and Doug, we love you, and Jay, we love you all. But we need the full panel up in the boardroom, right? That's what we're working on today. So my first question, it's for Tonya and it's for Mike. And just in the spirit of brevity and time so that we can hear from all of our voices, I'll encourage my panelists to be brief, yet descriptive. I don't know what that means, but you can do it. One, the first question here, tech has a known diversity problem. So it's going to limit its own potential, unfortunately. What's your suggestion for how to keep diversity top of mind in all decisions so that we can strengthen IT in one's company? This can relate to recruiting and hiring, vendor and software selection, everyday decision making. How do we keep that diversity top of mind?
You want to kick this one off? I'll let you.
It's up to you, Mike. You want me to grab it?
I was going to say that, back in 2019, there's a business roundtable. It's a group of like CIO or CEOs of like major corporations. And they changed their guidance from saying that the main goal of any business is just sheerly increasing your profits for shareholders. And they really went to a balanced scorecard approach. And they made that change back in 2019. And I think that we got to look at that same kind of viewpoint when we're running our teams. And we just got to be intentional about what are we rating success as. And part of that success has to include, are we getting the perspective of all our team members, looking at our teams to make sure that we have the diversity in there. So I'll take it then, you make the directive at the top level and you kind of trickle it down, but real change to me happens from the low levels going up. And so, I still like to code if I can code. So I'm gonna bring in some examples from my coding days and experience I still get to do. But when you're developing software, you have a bunch of requirements. You break them down into functional and non-functional requirements. Like I challenge people to look at that and say, are you when you're going through those things, are you putting in parts that are touching upon diversity? Look at, maybe you add in something that's called diversity requirements as your third prong of when you're collecting requirements. And then, we'll do use case analysis and we put the little actor in the box and say, this person's going to click this, whatever. But look at that actor and say, okay, well, what if that actor is a woman? What if that actor is maybe English is not their first language, like a lot of fellow Sikh Americans, And so just try to look at those things that you're doing every day and just bring the perspective of changing some of those little processes. And I think what ends up happening is if you change those little processes there, it starts to bubble up all the way through, So, later we'll talk about, like bias in AI algorithms and all that, but it starts from the beginning, even when you're looking at requirements, you're looking at just who's on your team, and you just got to make that happen at those low levels. So now, Tonya, what do you think about that? I'm sure you got some additional things to add there.
I don't have much to say. No, I'm just kidding. I always have something to say. No, I think you brought up the buzzword for me, which is intentionality, right? John Maxwell, in his book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, law number 1 is the law of intentionality. Be intentional about all things that you do. So I think when you take a lens, you have to look at it through a telescopic and a microscopic lens, Mike, is what you're kind of referencing there, right? So from a telescopic lens, you look at things like, your vendor selections, right? Your recruiting practices. But what I find, I'm a part of the DEI working group at Cox, and what I find is that we put all these dollars, for example, and pushing through maybe like the Black MBA program and saying, hey, we're going to advertise our jobs here. We want you guys, to come in. And are we actually getting the candidates? Like, do we get the return on the investment? And if we are not getting our diverse candidate portal full, why? Are we connecting back with the dollars that we're spending? Are we following up to make sure that we're doing the best thing that we can do? Or are we just throwing dollars at it and then telling people like me, who's looking for higher level leadership positions, well, I mean, this is all the things that we're trying, right? We need to be very intentional and diligent with relentless improvement and retrospectives to make sure that we don't just drop the ball on it, right? From the microscopic level, I think the thing that I can add on to what you said, Mike, which was brilliant, I think I can add, make sure at the team levels that we're being intentional on putting diverse teams together. And that means diversity in all things, including thought, right? Thought, gender, creed, religion, but everything. It all filters up to that thought. So I think even at the leadership, the higher level leadership who's in the executive suite, but Scrum teams need to be very diverse, right? We have a lot of male-dominated Scrum teams. You put a couple women in there, you're going to have trouble because you're going to get challenged, and it's going to go against the grain, and innovation is going to happen, right? So I think that we need to make sure all things that we're doing be very intentional about not just the telescopic lens, but also the microscopic.
And I would just, if I could add one thing, and Stefanie, the other thing I was—
Yeah, you got 30 seconds, sir.
30 seconds. We love to be data driven, and we have the regular matrix, the metrics about what do our teams look like and those things. But I would also challenge, just from like a day-to-day, more practical standpoint, look at the things like when people are going out for lunch, when there's these other kind of events like networking events and stuff like that. Who's attending, who's not attending, and make some adjustments there. Not everybody wants to go for a beer after work, So I think you got to look at those types of things when you're sponsoring events or sponsoring kind of team celebrations. If people are not interacting, or they're standing in the corner, don't even if they show up, but if they're standing in the corner, find out, this is not a celebration to them. That's part of that's not working. Then you have good intentions, but it's not working. So you got to look at those metrics as well.
Yep. Great point. So this next question is for Elliott and Tonya again. The pandemic and social unrest were black swans of our age. great disruptors and starters of volatility. So I was reading this book called Anti-Fragility. If you haven't read that yet, I'd encourage you. But here's what I learned. The root word of volatility, which we think of as bad, can be interpreted to mean to fly, which means movement, freedom, forward momentum. Because of this volatility, what will 2020 create movement and possibility for, especially as it relates to IT's diversity needs? So Elliott, would you like to, Elliott or Tonya?
I'll jump in, Tonya, if you don't mind. Being a CIO at the city of Indianapolis, we think about citizens, right? Number one. So when we are thinking about the people that are going to work here in this organization or work in any of the other organizations in city county government, we need to represent our community. And that's race, that's creed, that's color, that's LGBT, that's socioeconomics. All of those things are important. So when we're developing and deploying solutions, if I don't have a staff that has an experience that is like the people in my community, they're not going to think about them. 2020, and we know in 2021, I talked about trying to get digital solutions, trying to get this transformation, trying to deliver government services different ways. Everybody said, put it online. Smartphone, it'll be great, it's perfect. Okay, what about people who are unbanked? What about people who don't have a smartphone? What about those people who don't have a data plan? I was having conversations with IPS about the 40% of their students that don't have Wi-Fi and how we're going to get those students educated in this moment. Those are things that are opening up, I think, people's eyes to this equity gap that we always think technology is going to be the driver, the disruptor, the thing that's going to save us all. But it is not going to save all of us. It is going to save those of us who are at a level that can actually accept that technology, accept that disruption, have experience to those things. And we as the people that are driving that change need to understand that and have people on our teams and our staff that understand that gap and drive towards it, eliminate it, or at least be thoughtful enough to understand that what we're doing today may not reach everybody. We as a critical provider of communication last year on a website, Spanish translation is missing with my vendor, and I've been banging on them and beating on them for years. That's something that's missing. But I also have a Chin population here in Marian County that we don't think about, right? We have people that we should be connecting to and reaching, and I think all of you in the private sector could think about your customers as well too, that how do you reach not only your core, but those people that you've been leaving behind, and I think your staff can really help you to get there.
Yes.
That's awesome, Elliott. I love all of that, all of it. For me, inside of my company, I thought about, how have we actually changed? What changes have I seen with all of the impact with social justice movements and the pandemic? And I think that we're beginning to challenge more the norm of the executive suite. That's one that kind of like boom popped up in my mind. We cry at work and we mourn together during tragedy. Had a one-on-one with a coworker, and she just got on the phone and started crying. And how that made me feel was amazing, because it means that I'm doing my job, right? Because work is not just work, right? And then your personal life is out here. It's all coming together, and to trust that I'm a shoulder that they can lean on is wonderful for me, because that means that they're going to do everything that they can do to make sure that they succeed in their job, right? That's important. We check on one another. When things happen, the George Floyd verdict is coming out, right? I'm going to check on my people. They're going to check on me. My leaders will reach out to me to say, Tonya, are you okay? How are you doing? I know that you have 5 Black sons. We had another one shot yesterday. How are you feeling today? That's a huge game changer when it comes to motivating people. We promote mental awareness and mental health awareness, right? This is something that is on a regular rotation within my conversations, within my peers, my people, my leadership, right? We encourage work balance. When I came off of PTO, the first thing that I did was reach out to all of my reports and said, when's your PTO? I don't see any on the calendar. You're home, you've been home too long. You need to go somewhere with your children. Even if you can't afford to go away, you don't feel safe traveling. I need you to get out of here. I need you to take some time off. That's totally different from the button up, laced up approach that we had a year ago, right? Inspect and adapt stagnant policies on work locations. That is all coming down. All those things are coming down, where you had to be in New York, you have to be in Texas, you have to be in the office. Forget that. We've grown to the point where we can work through this, co-located and dislocated opportunities that we have. We're okay. Everything's going to be okay. The work boundaries are now coming down. So a lot of things, Stefanie, are changing, and I hope that they continue to change in that positive direction.
Thank you, Tonya. Thank you. Angel, were you giving us a celebratory, or were you raising your hand?
I was cheering. That was that. They don't have an amen button, so that was the closest I had to it.
We need the evangelicals to design us some Zoom buttons up in here. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to you next, Angel. So you're up. We want to hear from you. How do you see the hybrid work environment of the future impacting diversity programming, awareness, and empathy?
Yeah, I am so excited. So what I did at Genesys is it was around the time where we were really kicking up our Agile practices, and we were running woefully low on product owner skill set and tech lead skill set on our cloud platform. And I'm an adjunct at Ivy Tech, and I'm teaching, these young college students that are literally thirsty for technology and getting their hands dirty and their hands on technology to actually apply it, and not just, beyond the classroom theory. And that's my superpower as an adjunct, is I bring the real world from the employer base to make what they're saying in the textbook come alive. And I did my job probably too well, because now they're like, okay, great, that's the real world. That's how a real Scrum team acts. That's how it really goes down. I wish I had an opportunity to try that. And so I'm seeing these two needs, and I'm like, well, let's bring it together. So long story short, fast forward, right? We had 12 Ivy Tech college students be trained by one of our cloud experts on our platform. The possibilities are endless with these 12 folks, right? Because one, internships, depending on where they're at, right? And where they're graduating, could be brought on as associates so that we can grow and train our leadership and our diverse talent that way, right? Create a pipeline there. And then thirdly, our partners. So, if we have partners that are reselling our products and they need the skill set, how wonderful it would be that we're pumping out into the ecosystem to where our partners can pick up these folks and they have jobs ready to go right after graduation, right? So just that experiment that we tried with just those 12 folks then opened our eyes to a world of possibilities. And so then both Ivy Tech and Genesys and other employers, I've been on a few phone calls with other tech companies here in Indianapolis, where we're all banding together, looking at creating pathways for individuals that are, they're wanting to move out of maybe some blue collar work, maybe out of the hands-on machinery type jobs into tech. And we know, and this is where I get excited, starting salaries of folks that are certified on our platform can be 60, 70, 80K. That is a game changer.
Yes.
For
you're building wealth.
this population, right? And I'm thinking through about how we impact just that one individual. That's going to impact their whole family, because I know for a fact, I remember my first job, it was a first job at Lilly. I got my first check and I sent back home to my grandparents so that my granddad could get his diabetes medicine, his insulin.
Yes.
And I remember that like it was yesterday. I was so happy that I could give back to, my grandparents who had poured into me. And I'm thinking how many other African-American women like me who are shouldering their families, who are the primary breadwinners of their families, and who support not just their immediate family, but, you know, look, minority, Hispanics, brown and Black people, we're all about the community, right? And we are shouldering the burden, not just for our immediate families, but for aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents. And man, if we can upskill and pump into, you know, communities that way. So us tech companies, small and large, we have a really great opportunity here to reach a population and to grow. And so I'll summarize by saying that not just Indy, right? But if your company is global like ours, you can touch multiple communities at the same time, right? Or partner together with other companies and touch multiple organizations or multiple communities. And then lastly, I'm so excited about this lack of needing to sit in Indy. And I just personally, I had an open rec that sat for about 6 months. And when COVID happened and all recs were like, forget it, we're gonna do away with, you know, where the person sits. And I got the right person right down the street in Columbus, Ohio, right? And then I'm thinking female, right? And so I'm thinking, man, now this opens up to communities of color where we know that they're at. Because as great as Indy is, if I can tap Tallahassee, Florida, or Atlanta, Georgia, or Washington, DC, that just opens up the world of possibilities for areas that are known to have a lot of diverse talent right there as a pocket that we can now tap into. So I'm excited about the hybrid work environment and the many possibilities across the pipeline, not just entry level, but career, mid-career and advanced, so that we can get closer to the C-suite and make some of those changes.
Oh, I love it. Y'all see that passion? Look at that smile. Look at that energy coming out. And I know Mike is also passionate about this. Mike, what would you add to what Angel's got going on?
Yeah, no, Angel brings up some great points about, you know, where you can find talent to add to your team, and that's wonderful. And, you know, I think with anything that you know, whenever there's a change, there's always things are going to get better, and then there's going to be things that we're going to have to watch for as challenges. You know, and I think about from a diversity and just kind of educating, you know, my coworkers about, you know, who I am, what my background is. You know, there is something about when you're in person. I think when you're face to face talking to somebody, there's just a bigger impact. And I think they've had marketing studies in terms of, you know, like how much you lose with every level of communication. You know, so you got in person, you can go to like on the phone, you go to email, you kind of lose the impact of what that communication, what that impact is. So that's the, you know, the one thing that you do kind of, you know, have a little bit of a concern with. But on the flip side, like Angel said, you can hire people from across the country, across the world, and now you're going to have to work with these people every day, and that's great. And so, you know, I think just like social media, you know, overall, like it was kind of cool when it first came out. You know, you're connecting with people that got jobs across the world, and you know, it's all great. But then, you know, you look at some of the other parts where you got to guard against, and now a challenge with social media is that people kind of retreat to consuming the content that they want to consume. You know, and they just kind of, they can choose where they're going to go with their spare time and stuff like that. So it's, how do you kind of recreate the encounters at the water cooler? I guess I'll say, I don't know, we don't have a water cooler, but I guess that's the thing to call it, you know, but you know, those kind of, you just kind of, you run into people and you have those like conversations and you kind of share things with them. You know, the nice thing that's been, you know, during coronavirus, when everybody was on Zoom and stuff, like people were brought into your house. And if you had, you know, like maybe like
and Mike, I apologize. Hey, sorry. We gotta give Mike and Elliott the chance to talk. 10 seconds, like bottom line, your thought right there.
Yeah, sure.
For the group.
Yeah, so I would just say, you know, like that's the, you know, the thing that, you know, just I think we'll have to have like these networking groups are going to become even more important. So if everybody's working from home or remote and they don't have coworkers, I think it's going to be really important. Like these type of networking groups, especially when we get back to in person, is just to have those in-person interactions to really fully understand who somebody is.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, Jay, and Elliott too. But we talk about technology being the disruptor itself. And to Elliott's point, right? Like we think technology can solve a lot of things, but we don't always think about the equity side of it. How do IT staff, so the actual human beings involved, need to be disruptors as we move forward? How do they need to drive that people side of change, especially when there isn't a pandemic?
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, all of us in technology, we tend to, good technology people don't think of technology first. They just don't. They think about the people. So when I think about it, I was thinking about the movie Hoosiers, and I was thinking about, there was a quote in there where the coach was upset because one of his boys, he wasn't playing good defense. And he basically said, think of him as chewing gum. By the end of the game, I want to know what flavor he is. And that's how I think about the people side. You got to get to know people that really get to know people, especially at all levels of the company. Like Mike was talking about earlier, I think that the first thing you do is you get to know the people, you start really understand the process, but you have to build the relationship and you become teachers. Even as IT people, you teach concepts. What does automation really look like? And you help them understand because they just don't know. And I think that as you do that and you build a relationship, I think it really opens up the avenue for you to have the conversation about really disruptive things in the business and how to approach the business differently. I mean, I just believe in the people side of it so much, and its perspective. And if you don't understand people, from their different diverse backgrounds, whatever they are, then it's very difficult for you to come at them from a different perspective so they understand why it makes sense to even think differently. So being brief, that's what I think.
Yeah. Thanks, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
Elliott, what would you add?
I have a lot of that. I think it really comes down to stripping away the technology language. We can talk in our house. I talk in our house about business architecture, right? What do these agencies do and why do they do it? So like, what's the compliance aspect? What's the code? What's the law? What's executive reasonings to why they're doing what they're doing? Which can then get you to stake someone when you have that relationship and talk to them and say, we do this form, we enter information here, we do this, we do this. And go, no, I don't want to know about that. Why are you doing this process? Who are you trying to serve? If we can now be that guide, to your point, Jay, and understand the framework within the world they need to work, we can get them to use all the tools we have. We've got all kinds of fun stuff. We can bring you automation. We can bring you a process workflow. We can bring you some way to connect to this in a different form or fashion. Still achieve what you want within your rules. As long as I don't say the words like technology and data, you're probably going to tell me a whole lot more. And getting beyond our own language. You're so right, Jay.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, friends, we are at 6 o'clock and we want to open it up to your questions here in just a few minutes. I've got 2 last questions for our panelists. Before we open it up, we want to hear from you, and this is your audience with these amazing people. So first one is, and each panelist, you get 45 seconds to tell people about your own personal resilience, right? I saw it pop up around PTO in the chat, but personal resilience is where it all starts, right? It's about your ability to recharge, not power through, to take that deep breath when needed, grab another cup of coffee and get back in it. What do you do to disconnect on a routine basis? And what's your one quick tip for someone on this for participants on this call to find out what's their way that they need to recharge? Because it's a very personal thing. So 2-parter, and we'll start with Jay. How do you personally recharge? What's your advice for finding that way to recharge? Jay, take us away.
Okay, so personally recharge. There's 2 or 3 people on this call right now that suggested I start doing Orange Theory, and about 2 years ago I started doing. I'm 5 or 6 days a week now, so I work out almost every day.
Nice job.
It made a huge difference. Also, I'm a music guy. I like to sing, so I do a lot of singing at church and those kinds of things, and so that's another one. I think that you just have to find something that you can personally connect with, really get into, that is away from technology and those kinds of things, that, it may be reading, it may be giving talks, it may be lots of different things, but something that you can really get energy and passion around. And those are the things that I do when I'm trying to recharge.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. Friends, take notes on these. Find your thing that gives you joy. Mike, you're up. How do you recharge, and what's your advice for finding your one thing?
I would say be a big kid is my advice. I got 3 young kids. When I get home, same like Jay, I unplug, no electronics. We play Legos, play sports games and whatever it is. And it just gives you an excuse to just kind of not worry about anything and just be yourself. Advice for finding something, I would just say whatever, if you can do the activity and you were really focused on that activity and you weren't thinking about anything else, is what I would say. So if you can kind of clear your mind and really you're in the moment, whatever can kind of just put you in the moment and enjoy that. And we're always multitasking, so let's try to get away from that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Angel, your turn.
Let's see here. I would say, I'll be honest, guys. You guys will be my therapy session. I'm not good at this. I'm really bad. The whole me time thing and finding quality time. I'm like Mike. I got 2 like kind of little ones at home, and it's 24/7. So I gotta get better. But I will say the one thing that I did try during the pandemic that I didn't think I was going to get down with, and I totally got down with, was yoga. I am so not who I would have thought I would, but I really enjoy it. And then I would say be open, right? Have that agile mindset about trying different stuff. So give yourself a little experiment and try for just 2 weeks. Just try something for 2 weeks, whether you get a book off Amazon that you wouldn't normally read, exercising, going for walks, whatever it is, pick it. And like me, like yoga, I don't know, just try it for 2 weeks. If you hate it, don't do it again. And hey, you might surprise yourself.
Excellent. Elliott, tips, tricks, self-care.
For me, self-care was definitely finding that time throughout the day that I could get to myself. I think like many of you guys, it was 10, 12 hours a day on calls doing exactly this. And so getting up, walking, movement, a lot of working out, for me was the thing that really helps. And I'm a fake extrovert. So at the end of the day, I crash. So my advice to you all would be, when you know who you are and kind of to Angel's point, take that time to figure it out. I know that the best time for me to take care of myself is going to be first thing in the morning, actually, because that's actually time that I am really connected either to myself, whether it's working out, yoga, reading. If I spend that extra half an hour in bed reading in the morning, my day starts so much better than it does at the end of the day where I'm fried. I got to stop. But I had to learn that through, this time, because I'm like Angel. I will burn it on both ends if I'm not careful. And then you realize you're cracked, you're fried, and you got to stop.
Yes. Curse of the overachiever. Tonya, your turn. Self-care.
Oh boy, what's that? Admittedly, I don't have a lot of time. I'm usually in the car driving a kid to a sporting event or out of town participating in one with a kid, because we've been during COVID and pandemic, our sports haven't stopped at all. And we've been very blessed through it to keep busy. Gardening is something I love. Exercising is another thing that I absolutely love. I think that I would probably encourage people to find your tribe. How about that?
Good one.
Angel's nodding because she's part of my tribe. Find your tribe. That is so very important, and include them in the things, because they will force you to break that mental, have that mental release. They'll encourage that. I had a birthday party, and I invited some of my folks from my tribe there, and it was a 90s theme. And so we all got dressed in our 90s gear, and we came over and we partied really, really hard. And it was so fun, so much fun, that I'm going to continue to do that as a part of my mental break and just release. We had fun, didn't we, Angel?
We did.
But do something different and go against your own grain. Somebody, if you think you're this person, do something totally polar opposite, just to test your boundaries. How about that?
Tonya, am I invited to the next 90s party? That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
y'all, I got some sick dance moves. And by sick, I mean real bad.
Yeah,
So
Stephanie,
I
I
want
don't
in
know
on
if I
that.
really don't honestly. I don't know if we want that done.
Go on Amazon and order your gold chains and your high tops now.
Yeah.
I have a couple of extra gold chains, by the way.
I go back to the 80s. I got my Adidas tracksuit ready. So you guys are in for it.
Close enough.
All right. Yeah. So Darcy's leading the way. Actually, she's like reading my mind. Y'all put your self-care tips in the chat. Let's learn from you. Take some creativity to find the thing, right? Like, I hate the gym. I don't go to the gym. First time I said that to somebody, like, yep, I don't do it. I do the rowing machine, hot yoga. That's my action. Hot yoga when it's safe. I'm a couple days away from being vaccinated. I digress. Last question for our panelists. We need to know from you. And before we turn it over to audience questions, what do our participants need to be ready for in the next 5 years that not enough people are talking about? I'm going to go to Elliott first.
Oh, you got me.
Again, why I have no friends. I do this to people.
It's all good. You know, it's the fear of the unknown, right? Like right now, think about where we were in February or March 2020. I told my staff all of last year, we're in the middle of a 100-year event. No one saw this coming. No one. Anybody that says they did is absolutely lying to you. So it really is just be creative, be thoughtful. What we don't know that's coming will happen, and just consider that you know, the world around us will always change, and the only thing that's consistent is going to be that change.
Yep. In taxes too. Thanks, Elliott.
Hey, property taxes are due in exactly like 22 days. So thank you, everybody. We'll take that first $450 million.
All right, Jay, your turn. What are not enough people talking about they need to be ready for in 5 years?
Oh gosh, you know, when I think about resilience, I mean, there's lots of business things that we need to think about, and I think of new technologies and those kinds of things. But I think that we can't lose focus on the people and bringing the people along and just helping them understand, you know, from a resilience perspective, the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about and the relationships we need to build. But, you know, I mean, I could throw out technology things, but nobody really wants to hear that on this call. But, you know, from a resilience perspective, I think that it's continuing to build teams and figuring out how to do that remotely and those kinds of things. I think we're just beginning to learn how to do those things.
Yes, yes. Angel.
For me, because our SVP posed this question to myself and a handful of others, probably around Q3, Q4 of last year, and we actually like had to do research and the whole nine. And for me, it was all about when I think about 5 years, it's just going to be more about automation and human computer interaction, and how that paves the way again back to the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece, right? Like when we think about automation and the work that we do in tech, we're going to be we're going to need to be inclusive. And so that led my thinking and my study down the path of AI and how scary it is right now that we are so not inclusive. I mean, like I won't even get into it, but it's scary as hell, people. So
that's a panel for another day.
That's a whole panel for another day. But I see, you know, 5 years from now, that's where I see the future being, is around automation, AI, and the blending of people and diversity in that space. And we got to be right in the heart of that, and leading the way in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you. Mike, your turn.
I'm a biochemistry major and a computer science major. So I watch both those spaces, and I'd say equally as many advances we've made in the information technology, biotech is equally making those changes. And I think what we're going to see is more those things merging together. So, you know, maybe organic hard drives, you know, we might start seeing things where we're already doing the Fitbits, but I think we're just scratching the surface in terms of the sensors we're going to be able to put on our bodies and big data for our individual bodies. And probably I'm hoping for some breakthrough cures. You know, the more data we have, my hope is that we break through some major cures. A non-tech thing that I'm really excited about, whiskey aging. There's technology there that you can age whiskey in 1 year that would be equivalent to 20. So watch out. I might change up and be in the distilling business real soon.
I'll join you, Mike.
Thanks.
That's
All
good.
right, Tonya, take us away.
This is a hard one. I think the thing that comes to my mind, two things, work and travel. However you want to say it, spin it, whatever it is. Work, right? We've already begun this. We started last year. We're going to be working differently. Even when it comes to offshore, nearshore, onshore. Hello, how are we communicating? How are we going to work together? Can we have, teams that are kind of merged together, and how do we use and leverage different types of onshore, nearshore, and offshore teams blended within one team in order to have continuous workflow? When it comes to how we work within not just the time zones, but in the offices and at homes, what are our offices going to look like? How are we going to collaborate together? That whole work piece is one. I have zero clue what's going to happen, but it's a pretty exciting space. Travel. That's another hot ticket, whether it's going to be these bullet trains or, underground travel or, whatever it is, or if the difference between how do we stay safe when we're traveling? We've learned a lot in 2020, moving into 2021. What's 2022 going to look like for flights, for trains, for, how we actually move around the world? So I think in those two spaces, Stefanie, is the thing that kind of pops up in my mind.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh, so many great ideas. Friends, we want to be very respectful of your time. You have our panelists LinkedIn. Please reach out to them to the questions that you may have for them individually. We want to make sure you can get home to your families in the spirit of everything that we've learned over the past year, to Mike's point. Doug, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you for the honor of being here, being witness to sharing these stories with you all. Doug, turn it over to you. Take it home for us.
What a great panel. What a great topic. I think we've all learned a little bit more about each other tonight. Raise your hand if you'd like to see another all IT community meeting here, second half of the year. Yeah, me too. And from the chat, it looks like it's going to need a lot of wine. So we'll be working on that. You'll be seeing an email back from us on the summary. Like I said, if you've got a topic in mind for the second meeting, please reply to me with it. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Thank you so much, panelists, for everything you've done. Have a great evening.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Good job, everyone.
Thank you, friends.
Great job.
Everyone.
Bye.